Very good.
All right, buddy, thanks.
Turn your mic on.
Yep.
Yeah, you're special. Okay, the meeting's come to order. Sir, can I get a roll call, please? Oh, yeah. Could you please join me and stand for the pledge in a moment of silence? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Justice for all. Terry, the roll call.
Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Mr. Kroll.
Here.
Dr. Gatachu.
Here.
Mr. Gordon.
Here.
Dr. Gursky.
Here.
Mr. Reichard.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Clauser.
Here. Okay, next we have public comment. Anybody want to speak on agenda items?
You need me to state my name?
Yes, sir.
Tom Ciccarelli,
An address?
51 Maple Street, Danville. I petitioned the board via email on January 18th for some numbers, some statistics. I don't know if they're possible to be obtained. I also asked Carla Raup via email the day after, and then per Dr. Boyle's advice, I filed for a right-to-know request for some numbers that I hope you will all consider. I haven't received them yet, but perhaps you have them, and you'll consider them prior to voting this evening to continue contact tracing. I wanted to know what the number of children in the school district has been contact traced since the beginning of the year because of a school situation. You know, they were sitting next to somebody who had COVID, and they got contact traced, and they had to quarantine, stay home, out of school. I would love to know that number, you know, of kids who that took place, and then also, of those kids who were quarantined, how many of them actually got COVID? You know, that would be a good number to know. That would be a strong number to know before we decided to continue the practice of contact tracing. Just because, you know, the number of school days missed because of this act, not just, you know, family contact tracing, I kind of understand that. But it's simply a recommendation by the Department of Health to contact trace. It's not a demand, it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation. And, you know, I don't understand how we wouldn't factor in some of those local statistics prior to make a decision to continue the practice of contact tracing.
Okay, Mr. Ciccarelli, I did see your email, and it's stuff that I've discussed with a couple board members. So you need to watch the superintendent's report for this meeting, because I think you're going to find answers to your questions at that time.
That's good. That's good, and I hope you'll consider those when you guys vote individually, not you know, as a collective group of people voting, but individually to determine whether we want to continue this practice of contact tracing. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Jessica Van Sickle. I live at 10 Hendrickson Road in Danville. I want to know why we contact trace. My daughter got COVID. She's unmasked. She's been unmasked since the beginning of the year. She also got contact traced. Didn't have to quarantine because she was negative. With her getting COVID then, she got it from someone else with a mask on. Contact tracing, and the nurse told me, was 21 children out of school, which most of the parents I know refuse to test because it's a joke. The contact tracing, as I agree, there's so many children out of school for absolutely no reason. And as parents, we have full-time jobs. So now we're sitting at home not being paid because our children are being contact traced and have nothing. And I've seen a lot of, you're positive, but you're vaccinated, so you can come back to school. But when my daughter was positive, she had to quarantine for 14 days. And in that time, some of the kids that were contact traced were positive, but were vaccinated, so could come back to school, but then couldn't eat lunch in the same cafeteria as the rest of the people. But it didn't go the same for other children. Like, there's no set ground rules for anyone. Dr. Boyle, I had sent you an email about why we had closed. I replied back to you, and I still have yet to receive an email back about that. I had simply asked for the documentation from the Department of Health, because in speaking to the Montour County person there, they had no recollection of Danville's closing and going virtual.
I thought I had returned it because basically we have a nurse that we speak to who is assigned to
I
us.
spoke to her.
Well, not the same one, because there were 4 people on that phone call when she recommended that we close for the 3 days.
And why are we closing? It's running rampant.
We closed because the Department of Health has a recommendation.
Not a law.
No, it's not, but if you have more than 5% of your population in the building with positive cases, not quarantine, but positive cases, and at that point, we had every building have more than 5%.
Were those
So-
children actually tested, or were they presumed positive? Because I know parents are not testing their children because,
No, these were positive tests that we had gotten the information from parents. So these were actual numbers that we were stuck with, to be honest with you. So yes.
okay, and like I said, I was still waiting for the documentation from the Department of Health per your email telling us that they're the ones that closed us
It was a
down.
phone conversation. It was not documentation that they sent us anything.
Oh, I'd like to see contract tracing gone and mass optional.
Thank you. I don't know you, but I hear the concern you have for your children in your voice, and I understand the economic impact that you're facing, and I appreciate you sharing that today. I too share concerns for consistent policy implementation.
Is there any other public comment?
My name's Sharon Rydell, 924 Red Lane. I'm not sure what you guys were trying to do tonight exactly. It doesn't really clarify it on the website. I know some school districts got rid of contact tracing, but most of those school districts kept a mask mandate. My kids one of my daughters was, my kids are fully vaccinated with the booster, but just this week, she had contact with someone and she has to eat lunch in the library, which doesn't care, but it isn't just kids that aren't vaccinated. She doesn't have to be out of school because she's masked and boosted, but I just think masks, I know some people do not like the mask, but it does give you protection. So I don't know if the school nurses are involved in these decisions, but I'm sure the nurses are exhausted, and they should be a huge part of it, not just you guys sitting here. Those nurses should be a part of the decisions. So, that's all.
I do meet with the nurses regularly, so, and discuss anything I would bring before the board with them.
Okay.
Anyone else like to comment? Okay, the board would like to take action to revise.
I'd like to do my report
I
first.
apologize. Yes, the superintendent's report.
It's in relation to the health and safety plan and what the proposal will be. So there's four items that I want to help everyone understand. First off, are the current practices that were happening now, the data for the Danville Area School District, the litigation that has happened across the state. This is new information that I've received since discussing this, the idea of making changes, and the proposed practices that are being proposed in the health and safety plan. The first thing that's happening is we are following all the recommendations such as universal masking, social distancing, contact tracing, and all the mitigation efforts that include the hygiene, the teaching kids to sneeze in their arms, the cleaning protocols, the using the high-end cleaning materials to make sure that we're killing the germs as we go. So we're currently practicing those things. Next, please. So the data that had been asked for that I have looked at is, this is as of January 19th, so it's the first 90 days of school, which is one half of the school year. 611 students have been quarantined. Now, this does not include the cases of students who have known positive COVID tests. So you have 349 students with known testing for positive. Many of those are family member connections. But the fact that they actually stepped foot in the building within that 48-hour window prior to the positive test, that they are then included in our numbers. It's not saying they got it here, but it is saying they were in our buildings with this situation. So that then gave us a total of 960 students, or individuals, I should say, because some of those are staff, who have actually been involved in some way missing school. Of those that were quarantined, we had 21 students who, within their quarantine, then what we say popped positive or had to be isolated because they're quarantining. While quarantining, they came back and got symptoms and had a positive test. So when I took the numbers and pulled out the staff numbers of the quarantined individuals, and again, this is just the quarantined kiddos, they missed 2,890 days of school. So that is significant and truly an issue. Of the students who ended up being positive with potentially contact here at school, 96.6 of those students never got COVID. Okay? Jeff? So there's some very interesting facts in what I just gave you. Keep going. So when we look at some litigation that just came about through yesterday, so again, it was prior to setting up this actual meeting, there are 3 cases in our state at this time. The first one's the North Allegheny School District, where there was temporary relief granted, and the judge said that universal masking would be required while Allegheny County is in higher substantial status. This involves students who were autoimmune or at risk medically, was how the case was first brought about. North Allegheny has about 8,500 students in their district. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So that was a large district, a large situation for them. But when I looked at what the issue was, Then I went backtracked and looked at what was happening in our population who may be considered medically fragile. And I found that we had one student that, and this is elementary because my two middle school and high school nurses, I didn't get to connect with them on these numbers today. But in the elementary schools, we have several students that would be considered medically fragile or in the life skills support classrooms. And in those, there was one classroom out of 7, and the other was 12 students, and there was no individual that got COVID. The one who did get COVID resulted from a household situation. Upper St. Clair, the district court denied relief, which means they did not require the district to go back to mask mandates. But we don't know how that's going to turn out because the Third Circuit Court then said there was a relief in the interim. Got that right? Okay. And I'm not exactly sure because that just came today to me, exactly what their situation is. And then in Perkimonen or whatever, that is a case that's in progress, but there's no been the decision is they're expecting temporary relief likely, so to occur this week or next, but we don't have any information on that. So that leads into, okay, what is the situation with our provider of insurances? And with them, they have told us that we would have, if we went to litigation, even with changing how we look at masks or contact tracing, it may be more difficult to defend, but it would be something that we would still have coverage to be considered if we had something that came forward. Bobby, correct?
Yes, so really what it boiled down to is whatever plan we put in place, if we're following that plan, we will be defended on that plan.
Thank you. Jeff? So now, proposed, we're looking at 2 things. We're looking at mask wearing and contact tracing, and the date of implementation would be January 31st. Keep going. So in contact tracing, this is what we're following now, and we're trying to remain as consistent as possible, but it's the recommendation if you test positive for COVID-19, you isolate for 5 days at home, and then you may return to school or work on day 6 if you're fever-free for 24 hours without fever-reducing medication and your symptoms are improving. But you're still required to wear a mask on days 6 to 10. Now, here's where it comes in, the cafeteria piece. These kids cannot wear masks in the cafeteria. So we have set up alternate areas for the group of students. They aren't anywhere alone. It's by groups to have their lunch in an alternate area. In some buildings, the kids are loving it. They feel like they have their own personal little conference room and they think they're big shots. But we're not getting any complaints. We have, at Liberty Valley, our librarian works to read stories to the kids to make it as comfortable as possible. At the primary building, there's interactions with a variety of things. They're not always at the tables outside the cafeteria. They're oftentimes with our intervention specialists so that they have activities and things going on as well. So no one is being, singled out or isolated in any way in that situation. We're just trying to do what's best, having them eat comfortably and be without their masks. Anyone who's not able or willing to wear a mask on days 6 to 10 will need to remain home and can return on day 11. This is discussed with the families by the nurses when they talk to them initially. And we've had, in our incidents, we've had one family decide that their child would stay home instead of come wear a mask, etc. The identification of close contacts in the school setting, according to the current guidance, exposure in the school setting is when someone is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes over a 24-hour positive from someone who's tested positive. Right now, if both are wearing masks, the exposed students is not considered a close contact, and if positive case is not wearing a mask, the student under 6 feet would be identified. The situation, if we remove contact tracing, we remove those pieces unless we're looking at a household situation, or they've definitively been tested positive, and then those students who are positive, but we will not look to quarantine other students to reduce that number of students missing school. So here's our proposed option. As far as mask wearing, return to making masks optional and a parent choice. Maintain mask wearing when the household contact situation applies, which I just gave to you. Allow the superintendent to require masks for the following week if COVID-19 infections reach a 5% mark in any building to prevent moving to virtual learning. I want to prevent that at all possible costs. Contact tracing, we're saying continue quarantining individuals who are household contacts of a COVID positive person. Isolation in situations where students or staff have positive COVID test results. And again, that goes with the 5-day piece if their symptoms are getting better and they have no fever. And then no longer make the calls regarding individuals who may have had contact but are asymptomatic. So that takes away that piece. The other items that to think about are we will continue to monitor the number of cases in each school weekly and evaluate the data on Fridays, which is at the, not even request, at the mandate from the Department of Health. We have to report cases each Friday to the Department of Health. And we strongly encourage morning symptoms checked in the home by both staff and student families, and staying home if the student has symptoms, so that we aren't bringing it into the building. What I see as benefits of this proposal is in students, there's less isolation, there's more connection to the school, district, and supportive structures. Academically, socially, the characteristics positively impacted, and the potential of a positive impact on mental health. And I do want to say that Dr. Maffei, Mr. Huron does talk to Dr. Maffei regularly, and Dr. Maffei has a very big concern about the fact that more students are going to be harmed and potentially die from child abuse in these situations than are happening in the world of COVID for students. Do you want to
Yeah, I
respond to
do.
that?
I would like to add to that. The statistics are clear. Nationally, in the state of Pennsylvania, 4 times more students died of child abuse than COVID and flu combined. I'll say it again. 4 times more children died of child abuse than COVID and flu combined since this pandemic started. Let that settle in a little.
All right, thank you. For staff, it's more productive to have students in the building. We know that. It'll reduce that dual platform situations, enhance focus on traditional mission, visions, objectives, and potential for positive impact on mental health, as well as less learning loss. I guess I skipped that one there. For families, it'll significantly lessen disruptions to work adjustments. It'll remind families to keep children home when they don't feel well. And there'll be, for the community, there'll be less workplace disruptions, less impact on our businesses in the area. So, go ahead. This is a quote I told my assistant today, and she's like, oh, that's a good one. But I don't think anyone's wrong here. But there is no right answer. So we have to consider what we're looking at for our students. We have to look at what the data tells us and how we feel the least negative impact on the education and the social emotional well-being of our students would be for, the near future. Go ahead. And that future directions with mask wearing, we would go to having it be optional. We would have contact tracing on a very limited basis that regards, in definite regards to the positive cases. And when I would recommend that this begins January 31st of 2022. Thank you. All right.
Okay, can I get a motion for the board to take action?
Mr. Clauser, can I
Yes.
make a comment here? When it comes to mask, a lot of people have this very emotional objection to masks. I live in the operating room. I wear masks all the time. Masks have proven to be preventive of transmission of disease.
Sorry to interrupt, but procedurally, if we're going to have discussion relative to the health and safety plan, we would need the motion in the second, just to.
Oh, so when do I have this, when can I make this comment?
I would say once we have a motion in a second, so that
Okay.
it's up for discussion then, so
sorry about
that the entire board can add their thoughts.
You making a motion, Doc,
Make a
for
motion.
discussion?
Make a motion to discussion, yes, I will make a motion.
No, motion for the
It would be a
motion.
motion relative to the revised health and safety plan.
Is
This
that
is
to
what we need.
approve?
Yes.
To
Oh, I see, I
approve
see.
the revised plan?
Yeah, the board will take action to revise the Danville ESSER Health and Safety Plan as presented.
I'm sorry, it's to revise,
And
it's
there's
not.
discussion.
Somebody has to
and a
make a
vote.
motion, somebody has to second the motion, and then you can make your comment, Doc.
No, question is, are we motioning to approve or to consider, so? Because
To approve what was in, what's in the health and safety revision and what I just talked about.
Yeah,
The motion's on the agenda, but you don't have to make it. Somebody else can make it, and
Okay,
then the
I'll
discussion
pass.
can happen.
I'll pass.
I make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Terry, can we take a vote, please?
Well, he wants discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So can I go ahead now, Jennifer? So.
Yeah.
So mass, I don't think we should, it's more reasonable, to become more reasonable, if COVID had symptoms of cough and runny nose and sneezing and all those things, you wouldn't be happy if somebody comes to you with those symptoms. You would be very upset. So all this wearing masks, this social distancing, and it's supposed to prevent you. COVID had a different symptom, usually not very symptomatic, especially in children. So wearing masks is something that will prevent any type of viral transmission. The other part is the contact tracing part. It's not, this contact tracing did not start with COVID. It's something that's been there since people started to be aware of germs. And it's helpful. It's done by epidemiologists, which are people who are specializing in studying this type of patterns and give us some solution. So yes, we can review what's happening here in our district, but making decisions or making choices based on what we see as people who have not been professionals in this might lead us to a mistake. Given that, I support this change, but time-wise, I know CDC has said that it has flattened, and in some places the Omicron variant has started to decline. But what I see from our Geisinger is the number of admissions did not decrease. And Dr. Maffei has come with his team to describe to us how disease in children has been they have been more sicker than now. What I recommend is, instead of making it on a February 1st, how about pushing it a little bit? I mean, I agree with the plan. We had to adapt to the times. It's changing, it's getting better. We have hope, but we made a mistake in June. We tried it about 2 months ago, I forgot, when we made it mandate again. We don't want to go into that pit again. So I recommend to just hold it for another 2 weeks, make it on mid-February. By then, probably we'll see some kind of resolution. And the other question I have is, now, are we in 5% now, or where are we?
No, we are not. We're in much better condition now,
Okay,
so we're
okay.
very.
So I just
Yeah.
recommend to this plan to be implemented mid-February than the beginning of February. Thank you.
Dr. Boyle, what percent are we at now?
I don't have the exact numbers for you today, I'm sorry. I know that we have, as far as the number of students who have been in the building because of our closure, we're only at a few students in each building. I'd say less than 10 in each building.
Okay, my next question is, what is the difference from January 31st to immediately starting tomorrow?
in my mind, it is giving us a little more time to be cautious and to actually get the information out to the families and the community so that they're prepared for this.
Ben, is this open for public comment as well?
The public comment portion would have been earlier, but since it was on the agenda, so they would have, the public already would have had an opportunity to speak on the health and safety plan. Again, you'll be able to, again, at the end of the board meeting, again, speak on other matters, but with respect with the health and safety plan, that portion was included on the agenda earlier as required by the Sunshine Act.
Doc, I don't know if this might help you out at all or not, but later on the agenda, we're going to have a vote to give Dr. Boyle the authority that if she sees any progression in this, that she can put the mask on right away.
Yes, I'm aware
Yeah.
of that. I agree. I'm just giving a recommendation to just keep it there instead of trying to play catch up after people start to have more infections. But yes, okay.
Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, so January 31st, what if a student gets close contact trace tomorrow, and then January 31st comes around? Are they allowed back into school?
We would follow our plan now up until, and so they would have to stay out with the 5 days.
So we're just going to add, for the next few days, add to those numbers?
Potentially, yes. But again, as our insurance tells us, we have to follow our plan for them to be able to, support us and take care of any problems we might have in the future. So we have to follow our plan as it's currently written, and then this was proposed for January.
Anybody else want to make a comment? Ready to vote? Ms. Terry, can we take a vote, please?
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Abstain.
Dr. Gursky,
Abstain.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, the next issue, can I get a motion for the board to take action to grant authority to the superintendent of the schools with prior notification to school board members to modify and implement the health and safety plan with adjustments as warranted due to the pandemic to ensure timely planning and maintain stability in the district?
I motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Ms. Terry?
Any discussion?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, is there any discussion?
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Abstain.
Dr. Gursky,
Abstain.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay. Any board concerns or items for the next meeting agenda?
I have an item of concern. At this time, I would like to notify the board of my resignation as a member of the Danville Area School Board. This decision is a result of my very serious concerns for the failure of this current board to consider Pennsylvania school law and DASD board policies, coupled with recent decision-making that places this district at risk for litigation and does not commit to placing the social and emotional needs of our children at the forefront of our educational policy decisions. I will continue to be a strong advocate for our community's children and families, but I cannot, in good faith, compromise my personal and professional ethics under the leadership of this board. Thank you.
I echo Dr. Gursky's sentiments, and I will also be resigning effective immediately.
Any other concerns for the next meeting or agenda?
Just procedurally for the board's information, the board would need to accept the resignations. Obviously, they're not on the agenda, so that you would need to have amend the agenda to approve those and accept those resignations, so that those spots would then have to be approved and filled within 30 days.
Okay. Can I get a motion to amend the agenda to accept the resignations?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
And then, because this was a motion from the floor, we would need to open it up for public comment and any board discussion. Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
Just to add it to the
And
agenda.
that, okay, since it's an amendment, it's open for public comment? To add it to the agenda.
If there's any board discussion.
Is there any board discussion? No, Ms. Terry?
We're voting on amending, the ability to amend the agenda, and then we'll have to do another motion to accept.
And obviously, the reason for amending the agenda is because of the notice of the resignations that are effective tonight that could not have been placed on the agenda.
You ready? Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Dr. Gursky?
Yes.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes.
Okay, now we need a motion.
Can I get a motion to accept the resignations?
A motion.
I'll second.
Is it one resignation?
Two.
Both? Okay.
And then also, because this is a motion from the floor, I would again recommend public comment and then any board discussion before a vote.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who first and seconded that?
Sherry and Kyle. Kyle first and Sherry second.
No.
Yeah.
This is open for public comment? Okay. Public comment, anybody? Anyone on the board would like to comment? Ms. Terry, can we get a vote, please?
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Dr. Gursky?
Yes.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. Motion carries.
Any additional public comment?
Is there any additional public comment?
Tom Ciccarelli, 51 Maple Street. I don't know everyone on the board. Several of you are my friends. This is a shame. I think it's a shame for Danville School District. I think it's a shame for the public. And I think it's, we often conflate the easy road with what's good. And they're not the same. You know, it's hard being in your shoes to do what you do and make the decisions you make. I disagree with a lot of them, and I agree with a lot of them. Like this thing tonight about the you know, I'm glad it's happening. I wish it would happen tomorrow, not a week from tomorrow. But at least it's happening, so that's good. I understand that you have a lot weighing on you. But, you know, my dad was a superintendent at a school district in the 90s, and he spent his whole life in education. And I recall him talking about board meetings and about, you know, the tremendous weight that was on him, but also, you know, about the way the board would vote on certain things and get together and kind of shaft other people. And to me, it's a real shame that this has occurred, because Mr. Gordon and Dr. Gursky, I believe, are very level-headed, very logically thinking, and student-concerned individuals who are now no longer on the board. I don't know all the situations that have prompted it, but I would express my drastic discontent with it as a parent of a student here, as a Danville resident, and as a basically a human. I think it's a real shame that they were driven to that. I don't know what drove them to it, but it's frustrating.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Second?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Adjourned.